I apologize. Of course, that's a great way to start the show. I was on mute. We are live. That's what happens when you go live. This is the Sherdog Radio Network live recap show for UFC 261. I am your host. My name is Keith Shillan. Joining me, as always, is Ben Duffy, the senior editor of Sherdog.com. Ben, how you doing, my man? Well, looks like Ben is frozen right now. Hopefully we can get him back. Ben, just keep trying. Right now, he is frozen. Again, that's what happens. Oh, here he goes. Ben, you're back. Now he's pixelated. Ben,
I believe I am, yeah.
Ben, you there?
I think I'm back.
All right, there you go. Sorry about that, guys.
I can hear you.
This is what happens when you go live. These things kind of happen. Our Wi-Fi is looking worse than Chris Weidman's leg. Anyways, we had a crazy night. We had 3 title fights. The action ended about 10 minutes ago. Shout out to everybody who's watching us live on YouTube. Make sure you guys get in the chat. Talk it up. Tell us what you think of UFC 261. Tell us what you think of the card. Ben, we got 3 title fights. Let's start right from the top. We had a bit of a grudge match in the main event. We had a rematch. Kamaru Usman defending his title once again against Jorge Masvidal. Once again, Kamaru Usman walked out as a champion. Last fight was a dominant victory. Didn't please people with the amount of violence. The people complain about the foot stomps and the grinding against the fence. If that didn't satisfy you, there's no way you can complain about this one. Is Kamaru Usman absolutely starched Jorge Masvidal in the second round with one of the best right hands, I would say, at least in recent history, in welterweight title fight history. I mean, it's way up there. Kamaru Usman just continues to improve. Just talk to me about Kamaru Usman tonight.
What an absolutely sensational performance. I was one of the people that, going into this, my thought was, why does he want this fight back? But there was something about it. He clearly is working to build a legacy that has no asterisks on it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If he defends this title 5 or 6 more times, which I'm not saying I think he will, but he clearly thinks he will, and he's plotting his career trajectory that way, we'll look back. We won't have to look back and be like, yeah, but you know what? Jorge Masvidal gave him a real hard time on 6 days' notice. Did you know the first fight was on 6 days' notice? I'm not sure whether they mentioned it during the broadcast. I'm just saying, he said it to Masvidal in the lead-up. He said, you're a journeyman. You're here because I want you here. And I was like, well, yeah, but why? And I think it's because he wanted an emphatic, no questions asked victory. He did something to Masvidal that nobody has done. Now, don't believe Anik and Rogan. Masvidal has been knocked out before. He got knocked out by Rodrigo Dom way back in Strikeforce. But he had never had that done to him.
Yeah. Yeah, it was absolutely sensational. Shout out to the chat that's talking. And I apologize if I say anybody's name wrong. I will probably be saying some of the listeners' name wrong. I'll definitely be saying some of the fighters' name wrong, especially the earlier prelim fighters. But shout out to Zakika. I believe I hope I said that right. He pointed out Usman's striking is just improving. He said he knew Usman's striking was improving, but not to the point to destroy Jorge. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. There was a time when, I think about the 2 things. When I think about the run of Kamaru Usman, he had this long run of being undefeated in the UFC to get the title shot. Kind of always be ready. I'll fight everyone. That's kind of why he jumped into the title shot against Tyron Woodley in front of Colby Covington at that time. Got in there. But the narrative on him was incredible cardio, incredible wrestling, incredible grinding style, kind of like a John Fitch type style. That is not the narrative anymore of what he did last time to Gilbert Burns with the jab, what he did this time to Jorge Masvidal. Now his striking is not a weakness. It actually might be, I don't know if it's his strength yet, but it's at least an equal complement, at least equal weapon to his wrestling at this point. Agree? I mean, you got to agree with that, right?
I completely agree. Just the way he has handled 2 very competent but very different strikers in his last 2 fights. last 3 fights between Masvidal and Burns, he's just shown he's shown all the weapons. Against Masvidal in their first fight, which again, it wasn't aesthetically pleasing, but he just clamped down and didn't let Masvidal get anything going. Here, he barely wrestled at all. I mean, there was like one big loud takedown, but mostly he just outstruck the man. I thought I favored Usman to beat Burns, but I thought Burns was going to be able to hurt him on the feet and that Usman was going to have to turn into wrestler Usman. And I mean, he just sat him down with that jab. Yeah, I'm not going to get recency bias going here. He's not the best boxer in the UFC. He's not the best boxer in the welterweight division. In fact, Jorge Masvidal is probably still the best boxer in the welterweight division. But Usman's striking is an asset. It's a weapon. It's a strength.
Yeah. So I was think about his last 3 striking performances. Now, not that taking out the Masvidal the first fight, but I think about going back to Colby Covington. That was a very heavy pocket boxing. He showed he can do that. He showed he can bunker down in a war, that he can take a shot to eat a shot. I thought the broadcast team did a really good job doing that. That, you know, his chin will hold up and his power will overcome, you know, his opponent's, you know, striking. He showed against Gilbert Burns that he can handle a blitz heavy attack. And he did get, in fairness, I don't want to ignore that he did get hurt very early in that fight, but I feel like that was a anomaly. That was more of a surprise. He didn't expect him. But then he made an adjustment, and then he handled the blitzing style for the rest of the way. And then now Masvidal has a much different style. He's a sit-back, slipping counter-striker, and he was able to handle that. And you mentioned the takedown of Usman. And I don't want to glance over that because I think that had a big deal to do with the knockout. What I mean by that is the way, I mean, Masvidal always kind of keeps his hands low. He's relies on head movement. But when you face a wrestler, you kind of keep your hands a little lower, especially Usman, who has that snatch single that he likes, or the high crotch he'll come across. Those are kind of his 2 go-tos. Well, having the hand low to protect that. Well, the hand low is what did in Jorge Masvidal. And how he set up, like he tagged, he started going down, he went to the body a lot, he did a lot of jabs to the body, came into the wrestling, had him thinking low a lot, and then then he was working the jab. So those 2 things led up to the right hand. What I mean by that is he had him kind of dropping his hands, and then if you saw, he threw a jab, but used it as a parrying technique. He threw it to grab the hand and just turn and line up that right hand. It was absolutely incredible. And it's funny, and I don't know if he did this on purpose or it was just an adjustment, but at the end of the first round, he started getting a little wild. You had a lot of these weird swinging. I was watching with some friends, and they even said, like, wow, Usman he's getting wild. Is he getting tired with that? Like, that's kind of happens. And I started thinking, and I'm not saying this is what he did, but if he did this on purpose, it's absolutely brilliant. Stop throwing a wild right hand so you see it coming in from a different angle, and then the one that he knocked him out was no tell. You know, a lot of times when people talk about tell, what I mean by that is people will wind up like this. They'll turn that body to throw the big shot, and you kind of see it coming. It wasn't. It was a parry straight, no tell anything. And if he did that, if he was throwing the wide angle, so Masvidal would get used to the wide angle or that, and then change it up. If he did that, that would be one of the most insane knockouts I've ever seen. And I actually think that might be what happened.
I wouldn't put that past somebody who has now been under Trevor Whitman's tutelage for 3 fights now. Is it his 3rd fight camp? Yeah. Maybe his 4th. But because he's that kind of cerebral coach. I mean, look, we're going to get to his real star student next. But I wouldn't put it past him. Like you, I'm not saying that this was like some 4D chess thing that he drew up in advance, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, no, so you said he's a cerebral coach, and obviously I agree with that. You're an idiot if you don't, but I also think Usman's a cerebral fighter, and that's why it makes it such a good match. They have, to me, from the outside looking, it has a very Matt Hume, Demetrius Johnson feel to it.
I love that you brought that up, because I was about to say, Whitman isn't for everybody.
No.
But
no coaches.
No coaches. And that's why it was such a shame a few years back when everyone just flocked to Jackson Wink like it was just, magic, which it isn't. But no, it does remind me a bit of Hume versus DJ. And the thing is, Usman still clearly spends time with Henry Hooft, and it doesn't hurt him one bit. I mean, the guy is one of the best striking coaches in the game. Mm-hmm. But for Usman, being the kind of intellectual fighter he is, it really has taken him to another level. Zazakita in the chat says, Usman's got power. It's obvious when you just look at his body.
Absolutely.
But I actually disagree, because Usman has had the same body for the entire time he's been in the UFC. He's only done this recently. Yeah. I mean, he's always had the engine. He now has the transmission. He throws straighter punches.
That's right.
He doesn't tell them as much. He sets them up. And no matter how big your muscles are, it's the punch you don't see coming that drops you. And that's what he's been throwing recently.
Yeah, it's not the muscle that knocks you out, it's the technique that you throw. Now, obviously, the muscle helps. It's the weight behind it, but it's the way you throw it. Usman, the other thing about him is he has such long legs. Such long arms. You see it when he bends over and he does that little shoulder thing. He's rolling and he's loosening up his shoulders. You see his hands; they almost touching his feet. Like he's got these long limbs. And he's really learning how to use them. And the jab is becoming such an effective tool with him. He really is good at keeping people at the end of his punches. And when he starts throwing that and landing, it's just so good. I mean, this guy's got power, as you mentioned. He's got speed. He's got long arms. He adds that smother in wrestling. He's got the cardio to hold up. I mean, and then he's got a chin. And then he's got a chin that's, other than a brief second against Gilbert Burns, his looks sensational. It is just really remarkable to me the way he keeps improving, and just when you think he's reached the ceiling, he shows another layer to his game. And yeah, everyone will be talking about the knockout, but to me, I think the traps he was setting is even more impressive to me.
I agree, and you mentioned the threat of the wrestling getting Masvidal to drop his hands a little bit. I should have mentioned, he did try a snatch single, and I don't even think he was he grabbed
I saw
it.
That.
He let it go almost immediately. I mean, it was almost like a feint with contact.
That's right.
I don't think he ever actually intended to get the single there, unless Masvidal just fell on his ass.
Sure.
But it made him think about it.
It makes you think about it.
Just going back to what you were saying.
That's absolutely right. It makes you think about it. It sets up other attacks. It's right there. It forces your hand down a little bit. It's these little traps, and I absolutely think it was brilliant. Kamaru Usman is really, to me, he should be shooting up the pound-for-pound rankings. He should be shooting up the all-time welterweight rankings. And we'll talk about what's next for him. It sounds like the UFC has already said Colby Covington's next for him. We'll discuss if we think that's right. I'll ask the people listening, do you think that Colby Covington should be next? It seems like the lazy genius is asking, does Colby deserve a shot, or should the fight someone like Vicente? I'm talking about Vicente Luque. We'll get to that in a second. One thing I want to do, and I knew Josh Gross said, people love to talk about all-time greats and where they stand, and we're not going to do that on this show. And I said, well, we'll probably talk about it on the recap. So here we go. We're going to talk about it on the recap. And when I'm saying about Josh Gross, I'm talking about the preview show we do. So make sure you check out the preview show every single week. We do for me and Ben, do it for every card. Occasionally we have a special guest. This week we had a longtime Sherdog staff member, Josh Gross. The question I want to say is, we've debated before, his last fight against Gilbert Burns, did he surpass, say, Matt Hughes? A lot of people put Matt Hughes number 2 all-time welterweight. There was a little debate. Maybe somebody else might be in there, but to me, it's a no-brainer he surpassed Matt Hughes.
I would actually kind of agree with you at this point. My gut reaction is, don't advance him too much over, just for a spectacular win over Masvidal, who really, he kind of had to weave around some obstacles to get a title shot in the first place.
Sure.
He only got to that spot when he did because he was willing to step up on short notice. So don't invest too much in Usman's legacy until he beats a couple more people that have actually worked their way up the ladder of contention by beating a bunch of top 5. But you can look back and you can pick at Matt Hughes' title defenses too.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
He was fighting the best guy available, but the division just wasn't what it is.
Yeah, Sean Shark trash talked himself into a title shot. Some guys, Mark Sakurai was kind of undersized, getting brought in. I'm trying to think who else was some of his, that weird matchup with Joe Ray. I mean, there was some matchups with Matt Hughes you could really pick at. I think we're at the point where I'm not putting him on GSP's level yet. I still think he's got quite a ways to go. But I feel like he is pulling away from the pack for number 2, and I feel like the gap might be closer from him to the number 1 spot than it is from him and the number 3 spot.
I can get on board with that.
You agree? Okay. Now, I know I am someone who lives in the moment, so I wanted people to pick at me. Like I tend to overreact. I love living in the moment. That's just me. I get super excited. But let's talk about Masvidal for a second. Neither one of us really gave him much of a shot. This didn't go well. I do like Masvidal's strategy, what we did see. We saw him going after the leg early, trying to zap the power of Usman, which is, to me, I think is a very brilliant strategy. But you can't be saying 6 days notice. You can't be saying this and then get knocked out by the guy that you're supposed to have the striking advantage on. Like, what do we? All right, let's do this. Let's talk about what's next. Everyone wants to talk about what's next. Let's do Masvidal, because Masvidal has. You think about, what was it 2019, that Van Askren knockout, the run.
Yep.
It was 2019. Yep. He had one of, not just fighter of the year, but one of the most historic rises for a fighter in a single year. Less than 2 years later. I mean, his stock has just completely plummeted at this point.
Yeah, his stock. 2020 was not a great year for his stock MMA wise. Just he broke through in 2019 because he knocked some very good fighters the hell out, and he came up with some really funny, just in the moment one-liners. And the thing I loved about that is that Masvidal broke through to superstardom for doing the same thing he'd really been doing for the last 10 years. I mean, for a hardcore fan, this guy was appointment viewing since like 2008, just, whether he was in Strikeforce or, all the way back when he was getting posterized in like season 1 of Bellator. Like, you tuned in for a Masvidal fight. And he was always a guy who was a dangerous striker, an underrated grappler, but would always have a few mental lapses and just let a fight go that he should have won, or just get jobbed and get a bad decision in the fight he did win. And I just always assumed, okay, he's never really going to break through to that top of the top 10, but he'll be fun for as long as we have him. He finally broke through. Just the fight results broke the right way for him. He was still the same guy. He wasn't wearing like the silk smoking jacket.
Yeah.
He was, because he's always been a guy that he's pretty funny, he's pretty witty, but ultimately he doesn't like the PR, the marketing process. He hated being interviewed, hated press conferences, and after his breakthrough, I think he felt like he needed to level that up and become more of a Conor McGregor type figure. It never sat well with me, but more importantly, he only fought once in 2020, and it was kind of a bummer of a fight. Mm-hmm. And yeah, he stopped doing the things that got him to the dance.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think there was some perfect timing kind of going on, being at the right place at the right time. I want to shout out to Lazy Genius, said that he loves the Sherdog website. We appreciate that. He said he didn't know that we do content on YouTube. We've been doing this recap show for a little while now on YouTube, probably 3-4 months, doing it live afterwards. So spread the news to your friend. We do it after every show. We believe we do it more in depth than anybody else who does it out there. We have a much different style than a lot of the shows. We cover every single fight, so if you enjoy that, please listen. We also have the live chat going. Shout out also to our buddy Bass. He's out here talking. Always love to see him in here. He says he didn't know what's next for Masvidal, and I think that's kind of the situation. And it goes back. I didn't like the matchup with Usman. When we talked about Usman next, who should fight, I thought Edwards should have jumped the line. And I always try to think of not just on the top, but how what you have on top and how do the chips fall to everyone else? What trickles down to everybody else? And this is why I thought the Masvidal, well, he still had some stock, little cachet with him. Why I thought the matchup with his old roommate, his old best buddy, Colby Covington, was the match to make. And then winner of that could still have a huge fight against Usman. Now you've kind of, by making Covington fight, you kind of ruined that. He's lost some fights. If Edwards beats Diaz, I guess you could make that fight. But at that point, does Edwards really have to fight Masvidal? I mean, I know there's the backstory with the, Masvidal punch him in the face, 3-piece in the shoulder and all that. Like, you can sell that. But if you're Edwards and you're on this crazy winning streak, you already feel like you should be fighting for the title. So my question to you is, you're the UFC brass. You sit down with Jorge Masvidal tomorrow. He says, I want to get right back in there. Who are you booking him against?
It's going to need to be a step down, honestly. Part of the problem is that he's been in the UFC long enough, and he's been fighting against UFC fighters long enough, that he's fought a lot of the rest of the top 10. Part of the problem is also that the UFC just, tripped over their own shoelaces. I don't know why Edwards and Diaz are fighting, but yeah, Masvidal needs a step back. Somebody in the chat asked about, someone like Vicente Luque for a title shot. Even though he's done spectacular, I think he's like won 9 of his last 10. He's one of my favorite fighters in the division. That may be a little premature, but if they want to match him up with Masvidal, Masvidal is someone who he's dangerous everywhere. You have a lapse of concentration on the feet, he can put you away. You have a lapse of concentration on the ground, he can put you away. Luque's whole thing is that for a guy who is as gifted offensively as he is, he still gets in trouble he probably shouldn't get into. He gets into wild slugfest with fighters that just flat out aren't as good as him. I think he's a better fighter than like Nico Price and Randy Brown, but it was a more exciting fight than it needed to be because he has some defensive lapses. Masvidal is a guy who could test that. If he beats Masvidal, I'm ready to talk about Luque needing a title shot, maybe.
Yeah, so I think there's just a big problem with Masvidal. It's just so tough because still has a big name. He can still sell the fight. You heard it tonight. Even coming off a loss to Usman, he still got the big pop. Now, obviously, they're in Florida. That's where he's from. But, he got the bigger pop. He was the fan favorite. I would say probably most casual fans were rooting for him, generally speaking. The problem is if you're making a Colby Covington fight, that fight's not there anymore. I don't think the Leon Edwards should. I felt like, well, let me step back. I felt when they made the Ben Askren fight, I was calling for Leon Edwards. I said, you got the 3-piece in the soda, you have an assault backstage kind of thing. Don't waste this opportunity. Obviously a flying knee knockout of Ben Askren worked out. Yes. I didn't expect that. Actually, I was at that time. I was taking Ben Askren to beat him. I thought he was going to out wrestle him and win. And, kind of boring Ben Askren type matchup. So it worked out. But to me, when you made that Ben Askren matchup, and then obviously all the stuff that's going on with Leon Edwards since, you kind of ruined that one. So now I'm like, who's left for him? And I look at who deserves a shot, who deserves a name. And to me, I'm stuck with Michael Chiesa. That's the fight I would do.
Which, that's fine with me. But Masvidal's already beat him.
Yeah, I don't.
It was a long time. It was a long time ago in a different weight class, so maybe we run it back.
I guess you could do. It could be him. It could be Luque. But either way you do, you're talking about pay-per-view first or second fight. Maybe I still think Masvidal maybe deserves pay-per-view, not a fight night headliner, but I guess it could be a co-main event if you have a Conor type card or someone who could really, a huge John Jones, Francis Ngannou. That could be the co-main event where you don't need a big co-main event. But I really feel that's fallen off. If you ask me, go ahead. You want to say something?
Just how bad must Michael Chiesa want that one back?
Oh, absolutely.
Michael Chiesa, I think he's one of the most enjoyable and dangerous offensive grapplers in the UFC. He's a proud guy, like not in a bad way, just, he's very proud of what he does well. I know getting choked out by Jorge Masvidal probably is just like a rock in his shoe for the last 8 years.
Yeah.
I bet he'd love to get that one back. And I'd love to see it.
I didn't even realize it was 8 years ago. I knew it was a long time ago. 8 years is a lifetime ago.
Yes.
So this is what I'll say, as far as this is what I would do. Now, this is not what the UFC is going to do. So I want people listening. I don't want to be like, hey, Colby Covington, the Averti pretty much sound like Colby Covington's got the fight. He did the Megan Olivier interview. Did his Colby Covington stick. I would do this, and I'm going to match these two together, and then I'll get you with what you would do. Now, this is no one can say no. I'm in charge. I still think Masvidal versus Colby Covington is a fight. I feel like Colby Covington versus Tyron Woodley was a fight to make for such a long time. They missed the opportunity. When they finally missed it, it was too late. I feel like if you don't make it now, you'll never really get a chance to make it. Colby Covington versus Jorge Masvidal. I thought they should have been the coaches of The Ultimate Fighter. I thought that was the way to go. Didn't happen. But that's what I would still do. And then I would put Usman, and people are going to hate this, especially the hardcores, who's, I'm assuming, the only hardcores are watching. I would have Usman either fight the winner, who I think is going to win, Leon Edwards. Make him against Leon Edwards, who I think is going to beat Nate Diaz. I'm not doing tape studies, so it's not my full pick yet, or my official pick. However, if Nate Diaz pulls the upset, it's still Nate Diaz. And he'd be coming off a win over Leon Edwards. Would be on a pay-per-view. They'd kind of be, 1 month apart, so it'd be close to a turnaround. And Nate can always sell. You saw when they showed Nick in the crowd today, the pump. That's what I would do. Tell me what you do.
Well, as long as Boz LKMG says here in the chat, watch it be Shemaev. As long as it's not
very well
that,
could be.
I'm happy. I'm fine with that. Right now, I think Covington might be the most deserving guy. He's
absolutely.
Nobody's giving Usman much of a fight these days, but Covington gave him more of a fight than anyone else has. But I like your idea, man. Like it mixes the marketability, the little bit of risk and reward there with, it will probably result in a very deserving guy getting his title shot.
Yeah. So I believe this. And I know people are not like this. Just because someone deserves a shot, they probably I agree. Colby Covington has done most. You can make a very good argument for Leon Edwards. Definitely not Nate Diaz if he comes off a win off Leon Edwards. But sometimes you got to let things simmer. You got to let things marinate. You don't have to rush it. Like the Jessica Andrade fight, I said it on the previous show. I thought they rushed it. Obviously, I don't think it would matter now or a couple of years from now, regardless. But sometimes the fight becomes bigger if you let it sit. It's why Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao became bigger because it sat. That's why I would have done with Colby Covington. But sometimes you can't let other matchups, put guys against other people and then it falls apart. I understand that risk. Anyways, we got to move on. We've already spent a half hour talking about the main event. We still got a lot to talk about. In the co-main event, Weili Zhang defended her strawweight title against Rose Namajunas, and Rose Namajunas is now a 2-time strawweight champion as she landed a crushing high kick followed up with some ground and pound as she beat Weili Zhang just over a minute in the very first round. Ben, Rose Namajunas is back. Thug Rose. Let me ask you this. And I know the casual fans will be talking about Usman over, Usman over Namajunas because of Masvidal and that. But to you, did Rose steal the show?
Yes, and to me, Rose versus Zhang was the show. And I'm not even trying to be some women's MMA hipster, but of the 3 title fights, this is the one that I most expected to be a really exciting fight, whether it was 15 seconds or 25 minutes. I had some hope for the flyweight title fight, just hoping that Andrade would be able to do some things to at least break the ice around Valentina Shevchenko and get her out of her comfort zone a little bit. And the welterweight title fight was the one where I was just like, please don't suck. So it's not even that she stole the show. She stole the show in that she beat Zhang, which I didn't expect. But yeah, I'm just pleasantly surprised that the Usman versus Masvidal fight was so good. That's it.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely right. And obviously, You couldn't ask for a better finish of the card. Back-to-back incredible knockouts. I'm assuming, I don't know if the awards have came out, but I'm assuming both of the winner of the main event and co-main both coming home with performance bonuses.
I've got them.
Okay, good. Read them.
Performance of the night: Kamaru Usman, Rose Namajunas. Fight of the night: Molina versus Aori Shillan, like way down on the undercard.
That I think were the right choices. It's not often I agree with all of them perfectly. I think those were the right choices. I would have been okay with if Connelly and Leon got it in the very opener of the fight, but either way, those were great fights.
I would have been fine with 24 out of the 26 fighters in this card getting an extra $50,000. This was a tough night to hand out awards.
It was tough, but like to me, when you got a knockout like you did in the main event, co-main event, we knew they would get that. That was, it's hard to break down a fight that only lasts 1 minute. Like we like to break down the skills. What do you break down? She threw a high kick. She was moving. She was doing her roche, in and out, throwing a jab. And one thing we talked about, and I mentioned it on the previous show, was I thought, well, Weili is so strong, she holds her ground, and that can be such a great thing. She's a very stationary target. She doesn't do a lot of side-to-side movement. And when that happens, people can land the big shot. And Rose threw the high kick, and what was most impressive, it didn't go, a lot of times you see the high kick kind of go over the hands or wrap around the hands. Weili's hands actually came out a little bit, and it slid right in between, which made it even more beautiful. Because that's a tough angle to come in between. Just absolutely perfect. What else is there to say about it?
Well, I was looking down at my keyboard doing something else when I heard the yell. And so on the replay, at first I'm like, okay, did she throw like a lead leg high kick? But I'm like, no, okay, she just takes this smooth step into it and then throws it. And I was like, was it a question mark kick? Nope. Just she didn't telegraph it at all. That's the beauty of it. Did not telegraph that one bit. Like, obviously, I'm not a professional fighter, but to like the amount of flexibility that you need in order to be able to throw that kind of kick without winding up at all.
Yeah.
Like, who's got the most famous head kick in MMA history? Mirko Cro Cop. Mirko Cro Cop telegraphed his kick a little bit. It always worked because he always circled people into that leg. He basically circled the opposite way that you're technically supposed to.
Yeah.
And that's how it worked for him. I mean, he didn't telegraph it much for a 225-pound guy, but like with Rose, it was almost, the words fail me. Unbelievable.
And another thing about Cro Cop is he would kick through the block. Like, he didn't care if you blocked it.
Oh, yeah.
He would kick. He was powerful enough that he could kick right through it. She didn't. She kicked right. It was like a field goal.
It was like a field goal, and also Cro Cop kicked so hard that it could glance off your guard and knock you out. It could just barely skim the top of your head like he did to Vanderlei and knock you out.
That's right.
Where Rose hit her square.
Yeah, it was perfect.
Right kind of at the side of the neck, the base of the skull, just
down. I saw some people, and I mean, these are, I don't know why I do this, but I saw some people complaining with Weili by the way she kind of got up, like pushed the referee away from her, kind of thing. I'm giving her 100% pass, and I'll tell you why. One, she just got knocked out. You lose conscience. You don't know what happened. You forget. You don't. There's blocks. The things are getting hit. You don't know that happened. So as far as she knows, she might have got hit by Rose one more time, kind of on the ground, and she's like, "Oh, why are you stopping after one punch?" That's one. Two, there's a language barrier. I know she's learning English. She's speaking very well, but there's still a language barrier. So give her a pass there. So those are the two things. And three is obviously you're emotional. So I give her a pass. Like people saying, "Oh my God, she came off as post," but I didn't see that.
I completely agree. You can't hold it against somebody like their emotion in the moment, and unless they're just somebody who's given to tantrums. But she's not. She's an incredibly reserved person, and we just watched her have the worst day of her life.
Yeah.
Like, I'm glad nobody was there to watch, like, for my worst personal failures.
Exactly. I always judge.
I probably threw a fucking tantrum.
That's right. Like, I lose the game of Risk with my wife, and I'm like,
that board's going, table's getting flipped.
Yeah.
Mrs. Shillan's like, what the hell, Keith? Yeah, no.
I'm yelling at my wife, "Why are you attacking me? Your brother's vulnerable over here. What are you doing?" Yeah. I always react to people's losses 2 or 3 days later. See what they're saying on Twitter, Instagram, when they get to really see it, when they think about it. It's the person, the Sean O'Malley's, the Dominic Cruzes, the ones that are still talking about, oh, that was an early stoppage. Or those are the ones that kind of come off soft spot. I don't think that's going to be the case with Willie. I didn't know if I want to ask this, but I'm going to do it anyways.
No, you have to.
Because what the hell, I'm living in the moment again. Josh Gross said that if Weili beat Rose Namajunas, that based on her resume, Jessica Andrade would have been Rose Namajunas, would have been Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Could she have surpassed Joanna, who has more title defenses? Would she have surpassed Joanna as, the greatest strawweight ever? So, you know where I'm going with this.
Yep.
Those same 3 names are now on Rose's. She beat Joanna twice. She beat Jessica Andrade. And I know she lost to Jessica, but she avenged it. And now she has Weili. Is she the best ever? Has she surpassed? I mean, Joanna's got more title defenses, but she's won the title twice now. She's beat Joanna twice. Is she the best?
Joanna has 5 title defenses, but she has 5 title defenses in part because that was during an era when Jessica Penne was the best they could find for her to fight.
That's right.
And I don't mean that as an insult to Jessica Penne. She is a pioneer in the UFC strawweight division, but a female strawweight fighter in like 2015 is the equivalent of a male UFC fighter in like 2003 in some cases where it's still a growing and developing division. Right now, you just did it. If we take the 4 women that are even in the conversation, Rose has the best record against the other 3.
Yeah. No.
She's 2-0 against Jędrzejczyk. She's 1-1 against Andrade, and she's now 1-0 against Zhang.
Yeah.
That to me counts more than beating up, Jessica Penne and Claudia Gadelha.
Yeah. Yeah, and who was the Karolina Kovacevic? And I know Karolina has a win over Rose, but yeah, I don't want to spend too much time in this, but yeah, I agree. I think she has become number 1, and now she's got 2. You know what I love? And shout out to the UFC camera crew. There's some moments that need to stay private, but sometimes it's nice to see a private moment. When Pat Barry was talking to Rose, and Rose has been very honest with her struggles, with her mind struggles, with self-confidence struggles. I mean, I don't want to say mental weakness, but the mental game is a very tough thing, and I couldn't imagine in fighting in that level. It was really nice when he was saying, "You're the best. Say you're the best. You are the best. Who is the best?" And she said, "I'm the best." Like, it was just, that was it seemed like there was like a wall around her that was physically breaking off of her when she was saying it, and you could see it. And I think that's why she was so emotional. That was, to me, was a really nice moment to see.
It was. I mean, there are things that certainly you can look at from an outside perspective and kind of point out as like questionably healthy about their relationship. But a lot of that goes away for me when you see that they are both now full on adults and have such a rapport with each other. And it feels like, a private moment, but then at the same time, Pat Barry, during his own fight career, had his heart on his sleeve to such an extent that it all feels like a public moment when it's Pat Barry.
Yeah.
Pat Barry's, the guy that it's like, I got $47 in my bank account. I've been eating rice and ketchup for the last month. Thank God he was a heavyweight.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a nice moment.
And he's got a very charismatic personality. He's got a big personality. So you see that in his coach. And I mean, he'd be a great hype man, going in there.
His nickname was Hype or Die. Of course he'd be a great hype man.
Yeah. I want to say something real quick about the controversy heading up to it. The better dead than red and whatever stupid thing she said. I know she's tried to explain it. I still think it's a weak explanation. I think she tried again tonight. Fine. She's not perfect.
Nope.
We live in a society where people mess up. They say stupid things, and we kind of cancel them forever, or we don't ever extend grace. I'm willing to extend her extra grace. Like, you screwed up. You said something stupid.
Yeah, I mean, I would respect it more if she was just like, yeah, I said it to a Lithuanian news outlet, never thinking it would like make its way back to like my day job.
Stupid, yeah.
That'd be more respectable, but I'm inclined just to let it slide. Did she destroy anything? Does Zhang seem to bear a grudge over it? No. So all we can really do is see if it keeps happening. If it doesn't, it was an aberration. If it keeps happening, it was a trend.
Yeah. So a friend of mine, I was talking to a friend today, and he said something similar, and it was a different topic, but one thing he said, and I agree with him, we'd be a better world if people messed up and we extended grace more. And if everyone did that, every side, whatever political side you're, race, whatever, religion, whatever, if you just extended grace to people more, we'd be a better place. So that's what I would just want to say about that. Bass is asking, what do we do with Weili Zhang? Let's do Weili Zhang, and then we'll do Rose, because it's kind of, no one is jumping the line. There's no like obvious choice for a title shot. So let's start with Weili, because he asked for Weili, and I'm gonna ask Bass to throw out what he would do with Weili. I'll go first. This is the name I come up with: Marina Rodriguez. That's the matchup I would do. Her versus Marina Rodriguez. Thoughts?
That's fine, but that's not what's happening. I guarantee you this will be an immediate title rematch.
Yeah, I think you might be right.
I
think you might be right.
When you have a drop-dead gorgeous, charismatic, exciting fighter winning back her title, and that is a financial disaster for the UFC, which it is, like, we cannot overestimate how desperately the UFC wants Chinese champions and Chinese stars. And right now, Weili Zhang is one of a small handful of reliably good Chinese fighters. I mean, we're going to get to the prelims eventually.
Yeah, we will.
There is a problem with fighters that make their way to like 15-2 in China and have just never faced a top level striker. They want Zhang to be a champ desperately, as opposed to Rose, who, you know what? And this is not a criticism. Like, I admire her for this, but she's always been very open about her own mental struggles, her own motivation, her own emotional state. It would not surprise me that much if she just said, you know what, I'm done with fighting. I'm moving on to the next phase of my life and moving on. Like, yeah. she could walk away from the sport at any moment, and it would not surprise me. And that for the UFC is a ticking time bomb. Yeah. The UFC needs champs. Well, they want champs from China. They need champs who don't seem desperate to get out of the sport, because almost every champ in the UFC just seemingly they can't wait to get out of MMA.
Yeah. So my thing is if she loses, you've really buried your chance. Where if she beats Marina Rodriguez, you kind of extend your time. You extend the talk with her. That's what I would do. But I think you're on something. I think you're right. I think the UFC will rematch. Bass is saying Joanna for the title. I don't think she coming off a loss. Rose has beat her twice. No, the second one is extremely close. Like you could easily give the fight to Joanna. In fact, I think I don't remember. It's been a long time ago, but I think I did score for Joanna. I might not have. I don't remember. But it's just a hard sell now when someone is 2-0, which I'm sure we'll get to in a second. Anyways, so what I would do is there is another Chinese fighter that could become a champion. I'm doing the winner of Carlos Esparza, full turnaround with, her chant, and Yang Qianan. That's what I would do. The winner of that matchup, and they should get the title shot. And then you still have another chance at a Chinese champion if she wins. And then now imagine if she did win, talking about Yan, and now you make Yan versus Weili. 2 Chinese fighters fighting for the title.
And if they could make that happen right around the time they're ready to start putting events on, even if not in mainland China, at least in like Macau or something again, I mean, that would be
Could you massive. Imagine that? That would be huge. I mean, it wouldn't be big in our market. It might even be one of those similar to the Jessica Andrade fight where it's kicking off at 6 a.m. You know what I mean? But that would be huge over there. I mean, they don't have to do that. Put it on the Chinese time, like prime time in China.
Yeah, they would have to.
But let's not get too hard ahead of ourselves, because right now, Rose Namajunas is the champion. Would you go if you're running the UFC? You said you think the UFC is doing the rematch with Weili, but if you're running the UFC, what would you do?
I wouldn't. I would not do an immediate rematch if it were me. If I were the matchmaker, I would never do an immediate rematch in a title fight unless the first one ended in controversy. I think the UFC has wasted so much. They've wasted so much just competitive and even marketing capital by running fights back too quickly.
I
Just
agree.
something as simple as Dillashaw versus Garbrandt.
I totally agree. It's
So
you draw the rivalry out a little bit. I agree. And also, Weili has one title defense. And it was a fight that some people thought she lost. You know? Or, I mean, it was extremely competitive. Maybe you run that one back. Maybe you try to see if Joanna and Weili has another all-time classic if they fought each other.
I like that. And if Joanna beat Zhang in the rematch, that gives a little more interest in a third Namajunas fight. Because,
does.
You're really going to need to convince me to see the third fight if the same fighter won the first two.
Yeah, and if Tatiana Suarez wasn't hurt, and who knows if she's ever coming back, that one would kind of make sense because she was kind of climbing up the ranks, putting herself in position, but unfortunately she got injured and has been out forever. So let's wrap up the title fights, and we'll have to breeze. Based on time, we'll have to breeze through the prelims and the rest of the main card. But Valentina Shevchenko defended her flyweight title against former strawweight champion Jessica Andrade. Valentina, and she won by second round TKO. Valentina Shevchenko is freaking amazing.
I need to apologize to Valentina Shevchenko. I picked her to win the fight, but I thought Andrade was going to present some unique threats to her, and there were places where she might even have the advantage. I thought there might even be some upset value there. I was absolutely wrong. Valentina Shevchenko, what she's doing right now, it reminds me of prime John Jones. Not like last couple of fights at light heavyweight. Not talking about Jones versus Reyes or Jones versus Santos. I'm talking about prime John Jones.
Yeah, when he beat Rashad Evans and that
where
one. Yeah.
He beat everybody, and he almost seemed to do it by going directly at their supposed strengths.
Yeah.
Like, what started maybe the greatest rivalry in MMA history? It was Jones saying to Cormier, I bet I could take you down.
Yeah, that's right.
That is Valentina Shevchenko right now. I mean, obviously because she presents as a very Muay Thai type striker, we don't talk as much about her grappling. She's a fantastic grappler, capable of submission as well as just really strong positional grappling. But the wrestling, where she just scooped up Andrade with a body lock and slammed her like 4 times, and Andrade never figured out what to do about it.
Yeah,
that's how Shevchenko gets the fight to the ground.
We talked about it on the preview, and one thing I said is I thought her ground game's so underrated. And I said her ground game might be just as good as her striking, maybe even better. Like, that's how high I am on her ground game when she's submitting Juliana Pena on the ground, when she's slamming tonight, slamming Jessica Andrade. Like, one area of Jessica Andrade is always tough is that in close clinch. She gets inside. She lands the big shots inside. We saw what she did to Rose Namajunas, picking her up, slamming her. The times when she got a leg of Shevchenko, and Shevchenko just spread her hips out, made herself wide, kept her base underneath her, was incredible. But when she went on the offense, when she got the clinch game, double underhooks, and her hip control, her angle cutting, which is absolutely sensational. And if you told me that she would have an advantage in clinch, I would have probably agreed with that, especially her judo background and everything. But to have that much of an advantage where she easily took her down, easily moved to advanced positions on the ground, eventually to the crucifix. The crucifix is like, that's Big Brother and somebody. Like, that's just terrible, like that. It's not a head and arm triangle or some landing ground, but when you go crucifix on someone. Oh, man. And she landed some hard shots. Mauled her on the ground. And I know what people are going to say. Amanda Nunes matchup next, this and that. And we'll wait for a second. But sometimes, just before you're trying to get the two greats to fight each other, just appreciate the greatness. Like, I'm appreciating her just pure dominance. And I actually love a little bit of her, like, she's got this sweet personality, but I love, like she had a little, like, sweet personality trash talk to it. Like, stop saying I don't have a weakness kind of thing. Like, that was great.
Yeah. I mean, she's almost like it's like a cuter version of Fedor.
Yes.
Like she smiles a little bit, but she just says the most cold-blooded shit. Like when you actually make her talk.
Cuter,
Baz
much
Shevchenko
cuter.
made it look so easy. I mean, that's really all you can say about it. She took somebody that, yes, she was an underdog, but she was a 4-1 underdog where everyone else has been like 12-1 underdogs, and just flat out made her look like they didn't even belong in the cage together.
And that she just, I mean, she's makes statements every single fight, but she just made a statement of this is the best you got, like this is the best you got, and you still do that to a former champion who's known for her strength in the clinch, known for her power, and just outmuscle her, throw her around like a rag doll. Absolutely sensational. Let's get to what's next. Now, of course, everyone's saying, I saw people say the only ones that challenge for Valentina Shevchenko is Amanda Nunes and vice versa. I'm not doing that, man. I've seen it twice. I've seen Amanda Nunes twice. I don't know what it does for Amanda Nunes at this point. Why take the risk? You know, the second fight was extremely close. And one thing about the second fight too is I always point this out every time someone says, "Oh, Amanda Nunes versus Valentina Shevchenko, when are you going to do it?" It's like, do you forget how terrible the second fight was? How gun shy both girls were? It was a 25-minute staring contest. Like, how is there very few people remember that?
I don't know. I wonder if maybe they just didn't see it.
It is Derek Lewis, Francis Ngannou won, but for 25 minutes. It's bad.
Yep.
So this is what I would. Well, what would you do with her? Like, do you disagree with me? Would you do the Amanda Nunes? Would you make her go up? And what would you do?
No, I'm not interested in seeing a third Nunes fight, and I don't think it's realistic. And obviously, you're asking me what I want, not what is realistic. But it's pretty clear at this point that Amanda Nunes has a limited amount of time left. She might not be telling us, but you can tell that the wheels are going in her head.
She just became a mom.
She's a mom.
Married. Recently married.
She's married. And really, how many things are left to check off the list before we call her, maybe the greatest fighter of all time, like without splitting by gender? But she is by leaps and bounds the greatest woman ever to do it.
If someone said to me, and I'm sorry to jump in there, if someone told me right now that they rank, I hate ranking genders versus each other. I hate it. I don't do it. I used to write for another website where they wanted to submit our pound for pound, and Amanda Nunes went way down on the rankings because I would not put her in my top 10 pound for pound. Didn't do it. I said, here's the top 10. I do strictly men. I don't do women. Don't do it because it's stupid. It almost has like a domestic violence feel to it to me. Like, it's as stupid as that sound. Like, oh, if her and Demetrius Johnson met at 135, who would win? Like, no, that's weird to me. But if someone said to me, based on her resume, beating all the top women, the way she did it, that someone says their argument for who's the best is who's the most dominant in their weight class, and they said she's the most dominant and put her number one, I'm okay with that. Right now, already.
Yeah.
I wouldn't agree with it,
that.
But I'm okay with it.
So, for that reason, I don't think it's really realistic. And Shevchenko is in that same mode that someone like Usman is in. The same mode that George St. Pierre, Anderson Silva, John Jones, they all get to, where it's not the UFC's job to try to build a fighter in a lab to knock her off the mountain. It's their job to get the next person up. Just,
that's right.
It's fun to see excitement. Obviously, this was a night full of shocking finishes, some of them shocking upsets. But ultimately, there's something valuable about sustained greatness and sustained brilliance.
I want to see both them, and I know they get put together, but Amanda Nunes and Valentina Shevchenko just keep fighting the next number one contender, go on this run, see how long it lasts, and you have that Demetrius Johnson run. And it doesn't become necessary about the opponent, it becomes about the streak. 8 title defenses in a row, 9 titles, like we did with Demetrius Johnson. And guess what? Eventually the Henry Cejudo is going to come along. You will find the person. You know what I mean? Remember, Henry Cejudo was supposed to be the warm-up for TJ Dillashaw. It was the hurdle before TJ Dillashaw. I remember
Demetrius Johnson had already killed him once.
That's right. I was on the media press conference call, and everyone was talking about, because TJ Dillashaw was fighting Cody Garbrandt on the same card, and they kept talking about them two against each other. And I was waiting, like, oh, my will be like, hey, Henry, like, are you fighting Demetrius Johnson? Because nobody's mentioning you. Like, that was what I was gonna, and unfortunately, I actually remember the phone calls dropped, and the only person left was Demetrius Johnson, so I talked to him instead. But back to these ones. This is what I would do with Valentina Shevchenko. I would do the winner of Lauren Murphy and Joanne Calderwood. It's not sexy. It's not pretty. They're not in the best. I mean, Lauren Murphy's on a pretty good run, but it's going to be third down on a UFC pay-per-view. So be it.
Yeah, it's a bummer that fight's happening because I would have been fine with just Murphy moving straight into the next title shot and just making Calderwood fight on Andrade, or well, it's probably a little too late. Otherwise, the winner of like Jennifer Maia versus Jessica Ai or something. But yeah, it's a shame because Murphy I think Murphy's done enough to earn it. I
agree,
and it shouldn't matter, but it does matter that Murphy's like 37, maybe 38 years old. There's a limited window of time. Make it happen.
I was calling, and not a popular opinion, and not that I think she'd have a better shot. I think she'd actually have a worse shot. But I was calling for Lauren Murphy before Jessica Andrade. I was kind of saying, like, yeah, it's cool that she got a nice win, but I would give the title shot to Lauren Murphy. Kind of like same thing you're saying. Give her a chance. She deserves it. She got a chance. Just do it, get it over with, and 3 months from now, 6 months from now, you can do the next person. Andrade is in a tough situation. And our last fight at Strawweight is a loss. Her last fight at Flyweight is a loss. She's kind of caught up between two weight classes. What do you do next?
I think Flyweight is still her best weight class. And I mean, she may just stick around and wreck shop for a while. They're going to have to match her carefully, or she's just going to wipe out all the other potential challengers. She'll be that Joseph Benavidez or John Fitch, just kind of floating around and like crushing everything before it can make its way to the champ. We don't need like a goalie, which is what those guys became. But I mean, she could. We have her ranked 5th at flyweight right now. She could still very well be the 5th best flyweight in the world, and that's just what happens when the 5th best flyweight in the world runs into perhaps the most dominant champ in any single division.
Yeah. I think the number one thing I would do with her is just find out what she wants to do or what weight class. I'd have the conversation, sit down with her. Do you want to be the second best flyweight in the UFC, or do you want to be possibly you could win the title one day at strawweight again, or you could possibly be the 7th best strawweight? Like, that's kind of like the options. Like, do you want, this is pretty much where you're going to stand, you're going to knock off people, or do you still want to take a shot? Do you still think you can climb the ranks? I agree with her, she's probably still better at 125 based on, not having a draining weight cut, her high output style. But based on where the division stands right now, I'd rather see her go back to strawweight because I think she's more competitive with the top people in that one. It's a more exciting weight class. If she rematched against Whaley or anybody that's in there right now, to me it's just a better weight class. So I'd rather see another shark in that weight class.
That works for me if she's willing to do it.
Yeah. All right, guys. So there we are. We've covered all 3 of the title fights. We got to move on to the rest of the main card and then eventually the prelims. It's been a long time, but Chris Weidman had his rematch against Uriah Hall. Uriah Hall won by first round TKO. If you didn't see it, if you have a weak stomach, do not watch it. When Chris Weidman defended when he was the UFC middleweight champion, when he defended his title against Anderson Silva in a rematch, Anderson Silva threw a leg kick, which Chris Weidman checked. Anderson Silva's leg wrapped right around Chris Weidman's leg, snapping it. He had to stand over Anderson Silva and see a guy screaming in agony. It must have been a weird situation. Well, he experienced it from the other side tonight. As he threw a leg kick at Uriah Hall the couple seconds into the fight, and his leg completely snapped in half. Really gross stuff. Just terrible. I mean, Chris Weidman was at the end of his career already. this might be the nail in the coffin. It sucks. It's just sometimes it just sucks. Like you just say, it just sucks. It's a terrible situation. Like, God, I hope he gets better quickly.
Yeah, terrible for both guys. Because if there's one fighter in the sport that you could see just doing a job on mentally, that might make him more reluctant to pull the trigger in the future. I mean, the guy is flat out, said that he was bullied as like a high schooler, because he had like a funny accent and he was a shy kid, and that sometimes it makes him uncomfortable how badly he hurts other people. If there's one dude that this might fuck him up, it's Uriah Hall.
Yeah.
And then for Weidman, obviously he's going to get good medical care. This is the kind of injury that, knock on wood, is not life-altering, even if it's career-altering. And who knows if it's even career-altering. I mean, how many times did Anderson Silva fight on after this happened to him? And he was around the same age.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it might not be career-altering. That is very true. But then there's always the other stream. You hear other guys that they never really recover, football players and basketball players. Like, this could be career-altering and, like, lifestyle-altering. He could have pain in that leg. I mean, he's got to probably... I'm no doctor or surgeon or anything like that, but I'm assuming the rods and plates and shit like that is going to get put into his leg. It's just a terrible... I mean, obviously he's in the hospital right now as we speak, getting treatment, getting... I don't know what done, probably going to surgery today. But right now, he could be in surgery right now for all we know. Just a terrible, terrible situation. And I think besides the mental state it will do on Uriah Hall is now in a 3-fight winning streak. But he had an opportunity to, have back-to-back wins against former UFC champions. And obviously he did get that. He has back-to-back wins, but it doesn't have the same feel to it. Even Chris Weidman, when his second win against Anderson Silva, it was deeper into the fight. He was beating up Anderson Silva up to that point. He was, like, winning. That wasn't the case. This was immediately to start the fight. So he gets nothing. It's like, and then we don't get credit for you check the kick and this happens. It's always considered a freak injury. And I kind of feel, I know people say, oh, you check a kick and this does it. We see people check kicks all the time. This is still a very rare thing. It's still a lot more, and I don't want to say luck, but it's a lot more freak. It's more accidental than anything.
Yep.
It's just a terrible situation for everybody. Like, nobody wins from this. Like, Hall gets his win bonus and he gets his hand raised, but he doesn't move up the rankings at middleweight because of this, which a win would have, especially over a big name. Before we move on, Chris Weidman, if Chris Weidman never fights again, which is I still think is a very possibility. What would you think of Chris Weidman's career? Like, what will stand out to you?
He never quite got to the heights I expected him to. I thought he was going to go down as probably the greatest middleweight we'd ever seen by the time it was all said and done. Like, I was saying that when he was like 6-0, in like ROC. Like right around the time he beat Uriah Hall the first time, actually. I was like, this guy is special. It's because, he was he was a very good college wrestler, but he wasn't like a 3-time national champion.
No.
But he's the kind of guy that it just translated to MMA immediately, and then almost untrained goes in and like puts on the performance of a lifetime at Abu Dhabi. I was like, this guy is such a natural, and just kind of a natural boxer. Never had the fastest hands or feet, but he just looked like a guy who'd been boxing forever. I was like, that guy right there, that guy's that's like 6-0 right now. He one day, either he or this Rockhold guy is going to be the guy to knock off Anderson Silva. Never quite reached that, but man, he was the champ. He defended a couple times. He's one of the greatest fighters of his era.
Yeah. So Bass says that he thinks he's going to guess that it does move Hall up the rankings. Yeah. I mean, when I say the rankings, I mean more like a title shot rankings. Like, it doesn't boost him that way. Yeah, he might skip over. I don't know. I don't have the UFC rankings. I don't even use the UFC rankings. I go by the Sherdog rankings, which me and Ben both vote on with all the rest of the staff members at Sherdog. But yeah, I don't know. Say he's one spot behind Jared Cannonier, jumps him. Yeah, sure, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. I was meaning more like if he got a win over, and especially, he starts to Chris Weidman, first round knockouts, maybe he moves into a title eliminated matchup. Like, that's not the case. It's just a terrible situation all around. As far as what I think about Chris Weidman's career, I totally understand where you're coming from. He's going to have some unique moments. I'll remember the Anderson Silva knockout, one of the biggest upsets ever, even though I actually picked him to beat him, not by punch or whatever, but I thought he was followed a very similar route that Chael Sonnen did. But still, on paper, one of the biggest upsets ever. It's also not just that he beat him, but how he beat him, like the showboating with the left hook lands right at the very edge. Like, that highlight is going to be 20 years from now. That highlight is still going to be shown in highlight reel packages and stuff. And then he did have a nice run as champion. He had some good title. And he had some dominant wins. During that run, he's not going to be the second or third best middleweight or anything like that, but he's got to be in the UFC Hall of Fame one day. To me, he's a guy who maximizes his athletic ability, and just all around seems like a good dude. And if he comes back 2 years from now, whatever, I hope it's just an Alex Smith. Prove that I can come back from injury. I want to get one more fight in and fight some smaller guy, fight an Ed Herman and on a fight night, and then just retire. Like, that's what I would like to see.
Yeah, that would be the best possible scenario for me as well.
That wasn't the only leg injury, as Anthony Smith beat Jim Croot by first round TKO when Jim Croot couldn't go on. The doctor said he couldn't go on. It was between the first and second round. There was some fun action in this. The first Anthony Smith's jab was on point. I'll give him credit for that. Like, he looked good. It seems like he said he's been something he's been developing for a while, but seemed like a new weapon to me. The second thing is Croot's power was there. Like, Croot was landing some big power shots, and then when Croot did get on top, he landed some ground and pound. Anything you want to talk about the actual action before we get into the stoppage?
Croot was doing heavy damage to the front leg, like the lead leg. Of Anthony. Yeah, ironically, of Anthony Smith. Really, the only real loser in this fight is us. Like, yep. I think we missed out on what was shaping up to be a really, really fantastic kind of matchup. That's okay. About it. I do have some observations once the injury happened. Okay. But I'm good up to that point. So
let's jump into that. So this was a couple things stand out to me. One, shout out to him to get his leg fall. They call it dead leg. It actually happened to me doing judo once. A guy went to go to the judo throw, kicked me right in the leg, and suddenly, same exact thing. My leg gave out on me. I kept flipping down. I couldn't walk. I kept trying to, like, I've seen it happen. I kept trying to walk it, and it took me 5-10 minutes to. And every time I thought I was fine, I'd walk 3-4 steps, and then all of a sudden my leg would suddenly give out again. Like when he walked towards the ref, he seemed like he thought he was okay, and then it just gave out on him again. It's a weird thing. It hurt like hell. I was actually glad it happened so I could really experience it. Mm-hmm. But I give him a lot of credit. Like, he got a takedown and landed heavy ground and pound, and still probably he won the round, even though his leg gave out on him.
That's the thing, man. Like, it's alarming that Smith gave up an effortless double leg takedown to a man who literally could not stand. Well, yeah, that's a little scary.
That's Anthony Smith for you. To me, this was more about Jim Croot than Anthony Smith. But what do you think of the stoppage? Because I want to see your opinion, then I'm going to give my opinion.
My visceral kind of just gut reaction in the moment was, oh God, stop it. Of course. Because there's something immediately repellent about seeing a guy's foot flapping back and forth.
That's right.
Even if you're mentally okay, it's just a nerve that's deadened. It just looks like, oh God, like all of his ligaments and tendons are torn. He's going to lose the leg. And
what if I'm wrong? Wrong? What if he really did break his leg? What if there is something? Yeah.
But, Casey Leiden, veteran photographer and videographer for MMA fighting, he pointed out, he's like, when somebody gets brain damage in there, we go, yay. But if somebody looks like they might have rolled their ankle, we're like, oh my God, stop it.
We push people. Point.
They push people back out for round 2 with a concussion several times a card.
That's right.
Somebody got a little rung up in the first round, probably, a a CET that night, which showed that they did have a concussion. We push them back out there all the time, but oh, God forbid somebody should step on the wrong side of their foot. It's just kind of funny.
Yeah, that's actually a great insight.
And for the record, Casey, like he looks nerdy with the glasses, but he's probably one of the hardest trained dudes on the media side. Like that dude would kick my ass, up around my ears. But
yeah, he trains. Good for him. I have an issue with the stoppage too, because this is what stands with me. Like, yes, it looks terrible. I 100% agree with that. It's as a human, you're like, oh, it's like a hurt deer or they got hit by a car. You're just like, all right, I don't want to see a deer die, but like, come on, guys, we can't let him stop and shoot him. Where's the hillbilly with a shotgun that can finish this? But the flip side is I also just saw him get dead leg and for the next minute beat Anthony Smith's ass.
Yeah.
If he's willing to go out there hopping on one leg and then mentally it heals up over that time, he could still win. He's up 1 round to nothing. He said himself, I was going to hop and then pull guard. Okay. Even if Anthony Smith could beat you up 5 minutes on top, fine. But maybe that 5 minutes, your dead leg ended. One thing I thought he should have done, and obviously I was saying this to guys I was watching because they were all freaking out, and I'm like, he's got dead leg. Like, he actually could come out of it. No, they're like, oh, stop it. I'm like, no, he actually could recover. When he was on top of Anthony Smith, I thought he should have been pumping his leg. Like you're pumping. If anybody's ever changed brakes and you bleed the brakes, you keep pumping it until it gets hard. Mm-hmm. Like, pump it, your foot, move it around until maybe it gets some air. And then when you get back to the cage, I would have had him doing the same thing while he's sitting on the stool. Like, let's get that leg. Let's see if we can get it back together. But he didn't. He just stood there. And obviously, it's easy for me sitting in a chair to say this than actually trying to do damage on Anthony Smith and actually fight and be effective. But we've seen Sean O'Malley hopping on 1 foot in a fight. We've seen these things. We saw Henry Cejudo get dead leg, recover, and win the title.
I mean, Jamie Varner won a fight like hobbling on one leg in the. The fight could have continued. He clearly wanted to. Yeah,
he could have Imanari rolled and got it to the ground. Whatever, like he could have Fabricio Verdum fell on his butt and butt scooted. Like, give himself time. Have the referee tell him to stand up, get up. Do it for a couple seconds, fall back down, butt scoot, just till he gets his legs going. I just give him a shot, give him a chance. That's all I'll say. What do we do next with him? With these guys. Actually, let's go back. We never did anything with Uriah Hall. What would you like to see Uriah Hall? We talked about, he doesn't move up, but what would you next for him?
Well, the problem is he's already fought a lot of the guys that are kind of ranked around him. Like, he's fought the Derek Brunson types. If you look up a ways, he's fought the Paulo Costas. Yep. That's a guy that's coming off a loss and maybe they could meet in the middle. I mean, Cannonier's almost the only guy in kind of his neighborhood of the rankings that hasn't fought yet.
How about Darren Till? Too big of a name?
I would love that, especially if they aren't going to remake Vettori versus Till, because I still like that one. But if they don't, like, Till versus Hall is brilliant to me.
That's what I would do. I don't know if Till wants that. I don't know if Till wants that. He might be too big a name at this point. But
God, would you want it now?
How about Anthony Smith? Do we run this one back, or we just count this as a win? I count it as a win. I mean, it sucks, but it's a win's win.
Same here. Problem with Anthony Smith is, I mean, he's hit his ceiling. When he fights the top of the top, he just can't handle him. Like, when he hits the actual top 5, but then the Devin Clarks and, freak result or no, Jimmy Croots of the world, he's a little too much for him. Mm-hmm. I'd be fine with him taking on Magomed Ankalaev.
That's the exact name I wrote down. I like to still the guy on the rise, you're the veteran, to kind of be what this was supposed to be. That's the exact name I would do.
Beautiful. Because I was thinking, well, he beat Krylov, but Krylov is more in the same spot Smith is. Sure. Because, where Krylov, he can beat the 10 through 15 guys, but the top 5, he's shown he's not ready. But no, let Ankalaev show. Because a lot of people, myself included, think he's probably a future title contender. If he is, he takes out Anthony Smith. If he's not ready yet, someone who's as tough and as wily as Smith and is still improving even after 50 fights, that's a great test.
How about Croot moving forward? I still like him.
This does not change my opinion of Croot at all.
Me neither.
This is a win for Smith, but in my heart of hearts, I think Croot wins that fight.
I do.
With no
agree.
dead leg, I favored him heavily. Even if it had continued with the dead leg, I thought he was still kind of alive in there. I
would have started favoring Smith, but yeah.
But give me Croot versus Krylov. Krylov just lost to Ankalaev. Like, just stick those two together. Croot versus Krylov. Krylov is ranked higher. He's been fighting better guys. He's lost to some, but he's also beat some. Yeah, because Krylov has been in there with guys like OSP and Serkinov that are top 5 guys.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that matchup. I wrote Ryan Spann down as a, kind of eliminate one of the guys, but actually I think I like the young guy versus veteran matchup that you came up with, so I'm going to change my pick. I like the Krylov. Bass mentioned Hall versus Gastelum. If they're willing to fight each other, I'm okay with that. I feel like they're in the same realm. But they after the Ultimate Fighter and they fought each other, they became main training partners with each other for a very long time. As far as I know, they have a very tight knit friendship. Even though Hall's moved on, that might not be the case. But I don't think they want to fight each other. I think they're very good friends.
There you go.
Maybe, fighting's fine. We had teammates fight each other before. We've had friends fight each other, so maybe they would. I'm okay with Hall versus Gastelum. Let's move on. I would say the main card started off very disappointing with the 2 injuries, but then the rest of the way was fantastic. So overall, I thought it was a pretty good main card. Randy Brown versus Alex Oliveira. Randy Brown looked like he was on his way to a performance bonus. One dropped Alex Oliveira with a straight punch, and then ground and pounded him well, and then grabbed a rear naked choke, which is he got a 1-arm rear naked choke, which a little bit of a head scratch to me.
Now, people are going to think I'm just trying to rain on the parade here. He finished it with 1 arm, but he was using the other arm to keep Alex's arm away until the very end.
Sure.
So it's not like Oliver had 2 arms trying to get Brown's 1 arm off.
Fair enough.
So it was a 1-arm choke.
Fair enough.
But it's not like, he was doing the Nick Diaz middle finger to the crowd or something with the other hand. He was still.
Yeah, I think it's just because it's so rare. I don't remember ever seeing it.
The arms on the guy, he could probably choke 3 people at once with 1 arm.
Another fair point.
The range on Randy Brown, it's just, we were just talking about Kamaru Usman and how he's a pretty big framed welterweight, but then he has these freakishly long arms. Randy Brown, I feel like his arms are a foot longer than Usman's. It is ridiculous how long and lanky Brown is, and it's not like he's a skinny, wimpy looking guy either.
Yeah.
He's huge. Baz says Cowboy is washed.
He very well might be.
Well, he might be. He seemed to me to be that guy that just was tough as nails, and even though his face looks 45, he's actually only 32 or 33, and it was just going to take him forever to fall off a cliff. But you might be right, Baz. He might be. I don't know what it takes out of you to father 8 children by 8 different women. I assume it drains your life force some way. Dude, I will never stop talking about that.
Yeah, you love that.
Dude, his record contains 2 no contests, but it's 10 if you include paternity suits.
Randy Brown has been very inconsistent, but when he's on, he looks special. He looks like a guy that has the ability to be in those top 15 rankings when he's on.
Yes.
But he's 30 now. This comes to the time where you're kind of in your prime. It's usually about, say 27 to 32-ish range. Do you expect this good Randy Brown going forward, or are you not sold yet?
I hate to say it because it's just he looked so good tonight, and there's just something about him that makes me want to cheer for him. But I think he's always going to find weird ways to lose fights, and not weird ways to lose fights to people he should beat. Just he's going to hit a ceiling. He was in, and I mentioned it on the preview, he was in that kind of batch of the crazy action fighter welterweights, but he lost to all the rest of them. Luque, Nico Price, Bilal Muhammad, they all beat him.
Yeah.
Those other 3 beat each other up a bit, but they all beat Randy Brown. And Nico Price beat him up with a finish that we will literally never see again as long as the UFC. We could be at UFC 473, and we still will never have seen a guy propping another man's head on his shin and killing him with hammer fists.
Yeah.
His game's just, it's a little wild and a little wide open. I just think he's always going to be susceptible to the other guy's offense.
Yeah, I'm a little bit on board because of just the natural physical gifts he has. I mean, he has these, incredible range, long arms, height. He has some things that we've seen people who have that ability can really learn. He showed power at times. He's elusive. So overall, I would say I think we could see improvements, a rise. I'm a little sold. A little bit sold. Before that, Dwight Graham versus Stefan. Help me out with his last name. You're the John
Sekulic.
Sekulic. Sekulic.
Yes.
Yeah, Sekulic. Sorry. Guys, give me a break. It's 2:10 in the morning here in the East Coast, and today was my kid's birthday party, so I've been going. I had to cut the grass and do all that stuff. I didn't like this decision. I thought Sekulic. I thought he clearly won. Are you with me, or do you think you're okay?
I'm with you. I mean, the first 2 rounds were really close.
Okay.
Like, I thought the first 2 were very competitive. So my thought was, I'm not mad at somebody who necessarily gave Grant the first 2 rounds, but I didn't. I gave Sekulic the second and third rounds. And I say that as someone who picked Grant going in. But, just Sekulic looked good. He looked at least as good as he did before he was gone.
Yeah, I don't think it was as bad as Chris Wade's decision in PFL yesterday. I thought Chris Wade was given a gift yesterday. So
that was ridiculous.
Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I know this is very, very good. Very, very entertaining to listen to me count. 13 media members gave the score, including myself. And did you give your scorecard?
I didn't send my scores to MMAdecisions.com this time.
Okay, so I did.
Okay. I would have scored at 29-28 Sekulic.
Okay, so I'll throw yours in there. So 14 for Sekulic to, what did I say, 6 for Grant.
Wow.
So, if 6 people are saying the Grant one, I'm not going to say robbery. I agree, it was close. I gave Sekulic the first 2 rounds and Grant the third. I think that's how I scored it. But it was a pretty terrible. It was kind of similar to the Alan Joban fight. It was pretty terrible.
Yep. Notably, it was the only bad fight on the card.
Yeah, I agree. Not count. I'm going to say Chris Weidman's was bad.
It was the only boring fight on the card.
Yeah, it wasn't. Okay, fair enough. Weidman wasn't boring. It's definitely going to be memorable. It just, oh, God.
Yeah.
Before that, Brandon Allen heel hooked Carl Robinson. This is exactly what we said. Robinson was going to have the advantage on the feet. He was looking really good early. Brandon Allen was going to have the advantage on the ground. Very good. But then the heel hook. It was a scramble happened. You don't see it often, but when you see it, it is kind of pretty to see. Brandon's only 25.
Yeah, he's looking like a serious prospect.
Okay. I'm still more on the Randy Brown hype than Brandon Allen, but you were more on the Brandon Allen. I know it's 2 different weight classes, but
yeah, I'm more on Brandon Allen.
And it makes sense. He's 5 years younger.
He's 5 years younger. Those wins over Kevin Holland and Kyle Dawkins are looking better.
Those are good wins. And Carl Robinson's not a bad win. A heel hook, a finish. I understand it.
And the loss to Sean Strickland, I think, is going to age well too. So.
Yeah, I mean, his loss to Ian Heinisch is not that bad. Yeah, I get it. I mean, it was a quick fight. Anything else you want to take from it?
Nope. Just good work for Brendan Allen. Go to the path of least resistance. Take that man down.
Moving on before that, one of the most dominant wins. Pat Sabatini put on a grappling clinic, I should really say, because there was a lot of jiu-jitsu on Tristan Connelly. 2 things I'll say. One, Sabatini's transitions, the way he chained submission attempts and positions and winning the little battles, very impressive to me. But also, Connelly gave up a lot of easy takedowns by over pursuing on his tags. I thought Sabatini was very smart by using movement, have him chase you, which helps, them coming forward, you shooting forward. It's like I have to make up. I got to cut 6 feet. Well, cool. If he takes a foot, now I got to make up 5 feet. So that's what happened. Or he takes 2 feet on one punch. Now I got to make up 4 feet. Connelly to me fell right into the traps that Sabatini was setting.
Yep, Sabatini looked like a guy who was ready for the UFC and then some.
That's right.
Which, I mean, let's be honest. In this era, that almost everybody who wins on the Contender Series gets signed, short notice guys get signed that probably are a few years away from being ready. Sabatini is over ready. He was ready for the UFC, this time last year, and just the year disappeared.
Sure.
It's almost refreshing to see a prospect that looks as good as you expected him to. He looked great.
Yeah, I mean, some of those rounds were close to 10-8 rounds. So the first 2 rounds, really, really good. He actually almost attempted a Sulov stretch at one point. Before that, Denai Baccary knocked out Kevin Natividad in the very first round. Just an absolutely perfectly placed short left hook. When you see a good striker throw on the bag how you're supposed to, you don't see overextended arm punches. It's actually how you burn if you throw too many arm punches when you're boxing, and you overextend on your punches, especially when you hit the bag, because the bag doesn't have as much give in your arm extension. You actually kind of like pull your bicep muscles. It's actually very common for people to like pull the muscle. You just get sore muscle. So in the way you're supposed to do, it's supposed to be in tight. Your whole shoulder goes with it. Your back goes with it. This was a picture perfect left hook. This is exactly how you teach it. Short, compact, just absolute beautiful stuff. It was a short one punch on the button, beautiful.
And funny thing is, right before it, he hit him with a right hook that was almost as pretty.
Yeah.
Like, I was a little surprised that right hook didn't put Natividad down or at least get him stumbling. But he nailed him with the right hook. That must have just got his brain spinning one way, and then the left just. We both went with the slight upset pick for Natividad here, but that involved him going to his wrestling, because I still don't believe in Baccary's takedown defense, and Natividad is a very good scrappy wrestler. But if it turns into like a brawler against a striker, well, that's what we got tonight. Baccary looked fantastic. That was a highlight reel knockout.
Yeah, we both picked the upset, didn't work out. But generally speaking, I think we both had a pretty good night on our picks. I wish I didn't chicken out on Rose Namajunas. I was so close to picking her, but I chickened out. But I thought overall we did pretty well on our picks.
Yep.
Before that, I did hit this upset pick. Cazulo Vargas, or Rodrigo Cazulo Vargas, beat Zhu Rongju. I'm sorry, help me out. How do I say his name?
Yeah. Zhu Rong or Rong Zhu.
Yeah. Zhu Rongju.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought he was too patient, the Chinese fighter, especially early. He was too patient. He was losing the volume battle, and felt like he wasn't feeling that to me when I saw it.
I agree, and when he started even kind of like showboating and doing weird stuff like that, I was like, what are you doing?
Trash talking. It was weird. And then even when he started finding his range in the third round, he still didn't throw enough.
Nope.
Like, you're actually being effective now, and
no, he was Chinese Michael Johnson.
Yeah. That's a great example. Just like no sense of urgency. No, like I said, he didn't feel like he was losing, and I thought he clearly lost. Not clearly, they were fairly competitive, but he was losing the matchup. Not a good night for him. Vargas gets his first UFC win. Good of him. Before that, we had the fight of the night: Jeff Molina versus, and I'm going to screw this one name up too, Keelang Aori.
Keelang Aori, yeah.
Keelang Aori. Absolutely incredible fight. Incredible fight. I'll let you break down the action first.
Okay. One round in, because I picked Molina. I don't remember whether you did or not.
We did.
But
yep, I did.
I was not feeling good about that pick because he was having trouble finding the range.
That's right.
And Aori he looked a weight class bigger. Not just a little taller and broader, but just more muscle on his arms and legs. Like, not overly so, but like, you look like you belong in this weight class and you don't. But once Molina started to find the range, he started lighting him up. Like that last round was, I wouldn't have given it a 10-8, but I saw a few people did. But Shillan never stopped coming forward, and that's what made it a great fight.
Incredible.
Yeah, I felt as though anyone could still win that fight, even down to the last minute, which, hey, it was pretty one-way traffic by the end, but it was still entertaining to watch because you didn't know how it was going to end.
That's right. So there's a couple of things. First, when I was watching this fight, I had a friend over. Eventually I had like shitload of friends, but I had a friend over, and he's extremely casual. He doesn't know any of the fighters, doesn't really understand fighting, but he loves to learn. He's just a guy who he likes to ask questions. And it was just me and him, and I was really breaking down the technique that was going on. And this was, to me, was one of the funnest fights to break down technique. And it was a big difference between both that I saw. One was first for Aori, is he was sitting on his punches. He was hitting powerful, especially early. And Molina was just trying to touch. He was arm punching, just trying to touch. I was trying to explain to him and say, well, there's a good and bad with both. One, if you're sitting on your punches, well, you're hitting hard, you get more damage. And that was really forcing Molina to fight off his back foot. However, you're spending a lot more energy, and that could tire you out. On the flip side, I said, Molina, he's just touching, which is always a good strategy, but you're not really being effective. And when a guy's a counter pressure striker like Aori is, if you're not hitting him hard, you're going to force him back. Forcing yourself back. You'll be forced back. But if you can tire them out, you're gonna stop pulling away with speed because you're not going to be tired. You're going to be throwing at like 85, 95% speed, while they're throwing at like 40% speed. And that kind of was the case. And what happens, I felt also about midway through the second or so, Molina started really finding his range and picking up the timing of Aori. And once he did, the whole fight switched, where he started taking over. Regardless, really, really fun fight. I thought even though Aori lost, I don't think it was a bad performance for him either. It was just a fantastic fight. Before that, Ariane Corral. Oh my God, I'm really struggling. Carnelosi beat. That was not the name I thought I was going to struggle with. Beat Leong Nai by second round TKO. Dude, these girls got shot out of a cannon to start. The first 30 seconds of this fight was like berserker. It was insane, and it really didn't stop the action until Connelly found the stoppage. I don't have much to say about it because it's low-level UFC fighters and not the best technique. There's some pretty ugly scrambles going on, pretty ugly wrestling exchanges. But sometimes ugly wrestling exchanges becomes a really fun. Sometimes the JV matchup can be a lot of fun.
That's calling this the JV matchup is the perfect comparison. That's brilliant. The JV matchup where you're like two fundamentally sound wrestlers would never be in that position, but right. I'm excited to see what happens now.
You're warming up for your varsity match, but you're watching two JVs and the score's 16-14, and the guy wins. The guy wins 19-18, or the guy wins 21-19 in overtime, and you're like, man, these guys suck, but that was some fun scrambles. One guy's rolling to his back, but pin him and he rolls through. The other guy sucks, so he gets rolled over.
Right, but the same way, like a middling UFC strawweight, like Random Marcos would have tech falled either of these women in the first 2 minutes.
Right. Yeah. But even though it wasn't high level, it was highly entertaining. It was a very fun fight, in my opinion.
And Carnelosi, again, pound for pound, one of the most jacked fighters in the UFC. And interestingly, despite the fact that the pace was frantic and Carnelosi's got muscles, coming out of everywhere, Leong is the one that gassed out first.
That's right. Yeah,
she looked
that was the difference in the fight. That was the difference. Yep. She gassed out. So there you guys have it. We have covered all 13 fights of UFC 261. Shout out that the weigh-ins, not a single fighter missed weight, and they all weighed in within 50 minutes of the start. So we didn't even need the second half the second hour of the weigh-ins. And one thing we didn't mention, we had people in attendance.
Full
I don't want to get political, but did it? And I don't want you to say we don't want to get political. I know everyone has made up their mind on COVID, but did it make it any more exciting? Like hearing the crowd, did that do anything for you, or you don't really care?
Well, I mean, I'm gonna sound like a spoil sport here, but you know what? I already miss not hearing the little exchanges like Glover Teixeira and Anthony Smith talking to each other. I already miss that, and what I get instead is like people booing Weili Zhang and Kamaru Usman and booing like groundwork. I'm like, no, I was fine before. Yeah. I mean, I understand the UFC needs to make their money. This was a $3.3 million gate, which is actually surprisingly low. I expected it to be higher, but this isn't the biggest arena.
Sure.
But I mean, obviously the UFC needs that money, but I would have been fine with empty arena MMA for most fights. Like what am I missing out on? I'm missing out on people booing Kamaru Usman for the best performance of his career, maybe.
And I don't like when there's a post-fight interview and the fighter goes to say something, they stop booing, you don't even hear what they say. Yeah. Like, that always bothers me. Or chair. Sometimes it goes both ways. They go to chair, like, and you miss kind of what they say. Let's get into the fun stuff. The Bulls, the Bears, the cut list. Want to do the cut list first?
Sure.
How many do you have?
I don't have anybody for my cut list.
Well, there you guys have it. We have nobody who's going to be on the Shillan and Duffy cut list. The way it works is both me and Ben put names that we think should be cut from the UFC. We don't mean to do this as a negative sense, but to make room for other upcoming prospects. Like if we didn't have the cut list, a guy like Pat Sabatini wouldn't have been on the card. But to be officially on a cut list, you have to be on both of ours. So Ben has nobody, so no one gets a cut. I'll give you the two names. I had two names on mine. Kevin Natividad, he's now, I believe, 0-2 in the UFC. Mm-hmm. And my other one, which probably surprised everyone, Alex Oliveira. He's lost 5 out of his last 7 fights. He would have made my cut list. But Ben was after I was talking about people giving grace, I preach it. Ben actually does it. So act like Ben, not like me. Bulls or the Bears? What do you want to do first?
Oh, let's do Bears.
All right, you want to go first? Or you want me to go first?
I'm happy to go first.
Go ahead, Ben. You're up. And let me explain. Let me explain real quick the Bulls and the Bears to anybody who's listening who doesn't know what the Bulls and Bears. This is a stock market reference. A lot of other people do similar things. It's just who had a good night, who had a bad night, whose stock went up, whose stock went down. Bulls are when your stocks are going up. Bears are when it's going down. That's a reference on the stock market. We do it hockey style, like stars of the night, 3, 2, 1. So these are you don't want to be. So number 1 would be the worst person to have in the night. Ben, go.
Okay, number 3, Alex Oliveira. Like you said, he's lost 5 of his last 6. And as I was responding to somebody in the chat, when he loses, it's not a squeaker of a split decision. He goes down in flames when he loses. Like, he's just always soaked in blood or, strangled out of his life. And, he lost badly to someone in Randy Brown who, I mean, he has potential. Obviously, we both agree on that. But right now, he's nowhere near a top 15 fighter, and he just destroyed Oliveira. Oliveira's a reliable action fighter, but you need to win at least a few fights to stick around, and he's running out of rope. So that's number 3. Number 2, Jorge Masvidal.
Yeah.
He's going to remain marketable. He's going to remain a big name. He's good. He's still one of the biggest stars in the sport. But the difference between him and someone like Nate Diaz is Masvidal still thought of himself and wanted us to think of him as a championship level fighter. We have definitively shown that he's not.
No.
He's not a threat to take the welterweight title. So, I mean, he has the rest of it, and I am happy for him for that. He's paid so many dues over the years. I have so many good memories of his fights. I say that like he's retiring. He's going to probably fight on for another 5 years, 10 more fights. But this was the high water mark. This was the last time when he was in even the conversation to be like a title contender.
Yep.
Number 1, Chinese MMA.
That's on my list.
I mean, the three debuting fighters that opened the card went 0-3. Some of them looked better than others, but they went 0-3 and showed some deficiencies. Baccary won, but he's from Mongolia. Not Inner Mongolia like Shillan. And obviously, China's greatest mixed martial artist lost in stunning fashion. She'll be back. She'll fight for a title again. She may win a title again. But so much the UFC has invested into China. I mean, they built a facility there that dwarfs the Apex. You saw how much Chinese advertising was on the inside of the Octagon. It is a huge financial boon, but it's only a huge financial boon if people are fighting that the Chinese people care about. This was a blow. Chinese MMA.
Yeah. Chinese MMA was also on my list, so I'm not going to mention it. I'll change my top three. So and Jorge Masvidal actually was on my list, so I'll go with Carl Robinson. This is back-to-back fights that he lost in the first round by submission. So not necessarily that he lost back-to-back fights, but how he lost. Now, mind you, they were against Marvin Vettori, who's fighting for the UFC title next, and Brendan Allen, who you're very high on as a prospect moving forward. So not the worst competition, but still getting submitted in the first round, back-to-back four losses, loses of stock. My number two, Jessica Andrade. Just simply the fact that she's fights in two weight classes, and she's got losses in both weight classes. As her last time she fought in that. That's not good. Lost a dominant fight to the champion. Actually, recently lost to both champions. Not good for her. But number one, Chris Weidman. And I hate saying this like this. I mean, he's now lost 6 of his last 8 fights. He turns 37 in June. He's going to be on the sidelines probably till he's 38, if not longer, with an extremely major, painful injury. Just terrible. I'm not saying this in a pleasing way. I truly feel bad for Chris Weidman. Let's move over to the Bulls. Now, this is the good. This is the ones that you want to be on. My number 3, Denai Baccary. This guy has back-to-back incredibly impressive knockouts in his last 2 fights. Bounced back from a UFC loss before that. I know Mongolia is not part of China, but they might want to scoop him in because he's kind of on the rise. My number 2, Trevor Whitman. I mean, his team went 2-0. 2 knockouts. I mean, he's a striking expert. They both got knockouts.
He only coaches like 3 fighters now, and the other one's Justin Gaethje.
Yeah, good for him.
That's a pretty good batting average.
Yeah. And my number 1, I don't know if you saw this. How about Daniel Cormier, Jake Paul? Daniel Cormier got in a little fight with Jake Paul today. If you saw it on Instagram and stuff. Hey, DC, you kill Jake Paul in a boxing match, but it'll pay a lot if you want to make it happen. You want to come out of retirement. I mean, you didn't get Brock Lesnar, maybe you get this one. So, that's going to get blasted over the next couple of days. So maybe DC's next for Jake Paul. So that matchup is on the rise. What are your 3 Bulls?
You know what? I echo all of yours, so I'll just throw in real quick. Randy Brown, regardless of where we feel about his relative level in the division or his relative potential, this might be his best win.
Yep.
Like, it's either this or Brian Barberena, and he looked better in this one. Like, he just dominated.
Yep.
A really tough guy. And then Rose Namajunas, your first ever 2-time UFC.
She falls under the Whitman one, but yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. She certainly falls under the Whitman one, but she was the one that did more than was expected of her. I mean, I thought this was a miserable style matchup for her, even if I thought she was dangerous, and even if I listed out her possible routes to victory, a picture-perfect unblocked head kick was not on my top 5 list. So huge props to Thug Rose.
Yeah, I agree. She was the star of the night. Even though Usman was incredible, to me, she was the star. Was that it?
Yeah, that's it.
All right. So you guys have it. We have the Bulls, the Bears. We did the cut list. We got one more. What is your grade for this card overall?
This is my card of the year so far.
Really?
It sizzled. from top to bottom.
Yeah.
There was like, again, there was only one fight that was lousy in the sense of keep it moving. Like there was
I agree. Yep.
I can't give a card an A+ that had 2 fights end by freakish kind of injury, one of which was just flat out sad and horrible to watch, the other of which robbed us of one of the better matchups on the card. But it definitely gets a nice strong A from me.
Yeah, I'm giving it a B, and the only reason I really understand where you're coming from. I mean, it ended. If this was a TV show, it had an incredible finale. With the back-to-back incredible knockouts in the main event. I would have liked to see Jessica Andrade versus Valentina Shevchenko, title fight be more competitive, so that kind of pulls it down a little more points. And not only was it the other thing that brings it down is the 2 injuries. They were on the pay-per-view cards. You had to pay for that to see that, and it's just so sad to see Chris Weidman. Like if I'm, putting grades next to all of them and then average it together, like the Weidman fight's bringing it down to an F. It ended in 17 seconds, broken leg. That's just terrible. So I'm only going to give it a B because of that, because how depressed I was with the Chris Weidman. But I understand why some people have it so high. There you have it. That is the entire recap. We've covered all. Ben, we will be back at it this week previewing the next card. We have UFC. What is it? UFC. Where are they? This. I can't even keep track anymore. I don't even know who's fighting.
It's Reyes versus Prohaska.
Oh yeah. Give me your pre-grade of that card. If off the top of your head, I don't know if you have it right in front of you. May 1st.
I have it right in front of me, and off the top of my head, it's a C- at best. Like Sean Strickland being back is nice. Cody Stamann versus Merab Dvalishvili is a really good fight, but then there's like a lot of kind of pink slip derbies going on too.
Yeah, I think that's a fair grade. I'm interested in the main event. Prochaska is a really exciting fighter in the division. Dominic Reyes is the guy who almost beat John Jones, so I haven't given up on him yet. I mean, he only just lost to John Jones and the current champion. I'm a big Giga Chikasi guy. I think he's entertaining. I think he's fun having him in the main card. Dustin Jacoby taking a short notice fight against Ian Talaba. To me, actually, that became an even more fun fight stylistically. So, as you mentioned, Sean Strickland matchup against Christian Fialco. For fight night, there's some interesting matchups, interesting fighters. I agree. I think a C+ is a good grade for it. So there you guys have it. We are all done. I want to thank everyone who listened to the show, all the people who were in the chat. Make sure you go to Sherdog. Check out all the articles. There'll be matchmaking on there. There'll be post-fight interviews, all the stuff you want from an event. So if you want to continue to check out the coverage of UFC 261, make sure you head over to Sherdog, what we believe is the leading MMA website in the world. He has been. I am Keith. Like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Tell your friends. As some people said they didn't know, we do this show on the YouTube. Make sure you tell your friends. Everybody knows. Thank you guys for listening. See you next time.